everyone. In this video, we will read and understand the chapter Quality, chapter 5 of class 7. This is a story of an honest, hardworking and talented shoemaker who even devotes his life for his profession. So let's see the story of this honest shoemaker in the story Quality. But before we read, can a shoemaker be called an artist? Yes, if he has the same skill and pride in his trade as any other artist and the same respect for it too. In my opinion, any person, whether he is a teacher, a cook or a shoemaker, can be called an artist if he has skill, pride and respect for his profession. In this story, Mr. Gessler, a German shoemaker settled in London, is a perfect artist. Read this story to see how he devotes his life to his art. The story Quality. I knew him from the days of my extreme youth because he made my father's boots. He lived with his elder brother in his shop, which was in a small by-street in a fashionable part of London. The author of the story is John Galsworthy. We can also call him narrator here because he is narrating the story. So the narrator knew the shoemaker from his extreme youth, from his adulthood, because he used to make shoes for his father. He used to make boots for his father. The shoemaker lived with his elder brother in a shop in a small street in the fashionable part of London. The shop had a certain quite distinction. Distinction means being different from others. There was no sign upon it other than the name of Gessler Brothers, and in the window a few pairs of boots. He made only what was ordered, and what he made never failed to fit. To make boots, such boots as he made, seemed to me then and still seems to me mysterious and wonderful. So the narrator says that his shop was quite different because there was no sign upon his shop just other than the name of Gessler Brothers, and in the window also there were few pair of boots. So there were no big billboards, no advertisement, no decoration, just the name Gessler Brother, and at the window few pairs of boots. This person made boot only on orders, and the boots that he made never failed to fit. That means they were so perfect that whatever he made, they always fitted. And the narrator says that making such kind of boots was mysterious and wonderful to him then, and still it is mysterious and wonderful to him. I remember well my shy remarks one day while stretching out to him my youthful food. Isn't it awfully hard to do? Awfully here means extremely. Mr. Gessler? And his answer given with a sudden smile from out of the redness of his beard. It is an art. Here it is German accent is shown. It means it is an art. It was not possible to go to him often. His boots lasted terribly. Lasted terribly means lasted very long. So one day the narrator shyly asked him, "Isn't it hard to do, Mr. Gessler?" And came the answer from him that it is an art. That means shoemaking is an art. And it was not possible to go to Mr. Gessler very often because he used to make such nice boots that they lasted very long. They lasted for a very long time. Having something beyond the temporary, that means his shoes were beyond temporary, beyond normal. Some essence of boots stitched into them. Essence means the indispensable quality of something. That means the core quality of boots were stitched in the boots that he stitched. One went in not as into most shops, but restfully as one enters a church, and sitting on the single wooden chair waited. A guttural sound, guttural means harsh and grating, and the tip-tap of his slippers beating the narrow wooden stairs, and he would stand before one without coat, a little bent, in leather apron, with sleeves turned back, blinking, as if awakened from some dream of boots. So the narrator says that one went into his shop not like any other shop, not like there was no rush, there was no sound in his shop. So one went into his shop as if one was going into a church. It was so restful. And sitting on the single wooden chair, one would wait. One could hear the guttural sound, a harsh and grating sound as if some work was going on, and the tip-tap of his slippers would be heard when he would come down from the wooden stairs. And he would stand before you without his coat, a little bent in his leather apron, with his sleeve turned backward, blinking as if he had awakened from the dreams of boot. He's talking about Mr. Gessler here. And I would say, "How do you do, Mr. Gessler? Could you make me a pair of Russian leather boots?" Without a word, he would leave me retiring whence he came. Whence means from where. So, the narrator, when Mr. Gessler came in front of narrator would greet him and he would say that, "Could you make me a pair of Russian leather?" And without saying any word, Mr. Gessler would go inside from where he had come, or into the other portion of the shop, or he would go into the other part of the shop, and I would continue to rest in the wooden chair, inhaling the incense of his trade. Incense means fragrance. So the narrator would sit there resting, smelling the fragrance of his trade. That means smelling the fragrance of boots from the shop. Soon he would come back holding in his hand a piece of gold brown leather. With eyes fixed on it, he would remark, "What a beautiful piece." When I too had admired it, he would speak again, "When do you want them?" And I would answer, "Oh, as soon as you conveniently can." And he would say, "Tomorrow fortnight?" Or if he were his elder brother, "I will ask my brother." So the narrator would say that soon he would come back holding a piece of golden brown leather, and he would admire the piece by saying, "What a beautiful piece." And when the narrator too had admired it, Mr. Gessler would again ask, "When do you want them?" And then narrator would answer, as it is comfortable to you. And then he would say, "From tomorrow fortnight." Or if it was his brother, the brother would say, "I would ask my brother." Then I would murmur, "Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Gessler. Good morning." He would reply, still looking at the leather in his hand, and as I moved to the door, I would hear the tip-tap of his slippers going up the stairs to his dream of boots. And then narrator would wish him good morning, and then they would retire, and narrator could still hear the tip-tap of his shoes going again to his land of dreams, boot dreams. I cannot forget that day on which I had occasion to say him, "Mr. Gessler, the last pair of boots creak, you know." So the narrator says that he could not forget that day on which he said to Mr. Gessler that the last pair of boot creak. That means making a creaking sound. The boots made sound. Or he looked at me from time without replying, as if expecting me to withdraw or qualify the statement that said, "I shouldn't have creaked." Here creak can also be said little broken or little cracked. So he would, when the narrator had said that the last pair of boot creak, the Mr. Gessler would look at him with surprise and say that it should not have creaked. "It did, I'm afraid." "You got them wet before they found themselves?" So Mr. Gessler would be shocked, and he would say that Mr. Gessler was shocked, and he said that it should not have creaked. And then Mr. Gessler said, "Did you get them wet? Were the shoes wet before they would found themselves?" That means before they could make themselves fit into your feet. "Did you get them wet?" "I don't think so." The narrator said, "No, I don't think so. I got them wet." At that, he lowered his eyes as if hunting for memory of those boots, and I felt sorry I had mentioned this grave thing. "Send them back," he said. "I will look at them." So then Mr. Gessler looked at the pair of shoes, trying to remember when has he stitched those boots. And then he said, and at that moment the narrator felt so sorry why he had at all mentioned creaking of the boots. And then Mr. Gessler said, "Send them back and I would look at them. Some boots," he continued slowly, "are bad from birth. If I can do nothing with them, I will take them off your bill." Then Mr. Gessler said that some boots are bad at birth itself, and if I can't repair them, I would take them off your bill. That means I will just pay you for the shoes, or I will not pay, I will adjust the price of those boots in your next bill. Once and only once, I went absent-mindedly into his shop in a pair of boots brought in an emergency at some large firm. He took my order without showing me any leather, and I could feel his eyes penetrating the inferior covering of my foot. At last he said, "Those are not my boots." So once the narrator went into Mr. Gessler's shop absent-mindedly, wearing a pair of shoes which he has bought in an emergency from some large food. And Mr. Gessler took his order, and his eyes penetrated means went deep inside the inferior means not that good covering of his foot. And at last he recognized the boots, and he said that these boots are not from my shoes. These boots are not from my shop. He realized that. The tone was not one of anger nor of sorrow, not even of contempt. Contempt means dislike or jealousy. So the tone with which he asked, it was not of anger, nor of sorrow, nor of jealousy. But there was in it something quite that frozen the blood. But there was a tone that would be enough to freeze the blood. That means it was kind of sad or shocking. He put his hand down and pressed a finger on a place where the left boot was not quite comfortable. "It hurts you there. It hurts you there," he said. "These big firms have no self-respect." And then, as if something had given away within him, he spoke long and bitterly. It was the only time I've heard him discuss the conditions and hardship of his trade. So Mr. Gessler put his feet somewhere on the author's shoes, and he pressed it there, and he said that it hurts here, right? And he was right. Then Mr. Gessler said, "These big firms, they have no self-respect. That means they make just shoes without quality." This was the meaning by saying these big firms have no self-respect. And then he said bitterly about the big firms, and this was the first time the narrator had seen Mr. Gessler talking about the hardship of his profession. "They get it all," he said. "They get it by advertisement, not by work." Then Mr. Gessler complained of big firms. He said that these big firms get all the job just by advertisement, not by work. "They take it away from us who love our booze. It comes to this. Presently, I have no work." So Mr. Gessler said that they take all the work from us also by advertisement, and we are suffering. Presently, I have no work. Every year it gets less. And he also said that every year the work he gets is less. Here it is written in such kind of English to show his German accent. "You will see." And looking at his lined face, I saw things I had never noticed before, bitter things and bitter struggle, and what a lot of grey hairs there seemed suddenly in his red beard. When Mr. Gessler was complaining about big firms, the narrator could see the bitterness on his face, how he has struggled. His hair has turned grey and his beard red. As best as I could, I explained the circumstances of those ill-omened boots, but his face and voice made so deep an impression that during the next few minutes I ordered many pairs. They lasted longer than ever, and I was not able to go to him for nearly 2 years. So, as if the author was guilty of taking those shoes or buying those shoes, and the voice of Mr. Gessler had such deep impression on the author that in the next few minutes he ordered many pairs of shoes, and those shoes lasted so long that the author did not go to Mr. Gessler's shop for the next 2 years. It was many months before my next visit to his shop. This time it appeared to be his elder brother handling a piece of leather. So when next time he went into his shop, it was many months past, and it appeared that it was his elder brother who was handling a piece of leather. "Well, Mr. Gessler," I said, "how are you?" He came close and peered at me. "I am pretty well," he said slowly, "but my elder brother is dead." It was, in fact, Mr. Gessler, not his elder brother, and he said, "My elder brother is dead." And I saw that it was indeed himself, but how aged and wan. Wan here means dull, pale, as if sick. So then the author realized that it was actually Mr. Gessler, and how he has aged and he has become dull and pale. And never before had I heard him mention his brother. Much shocked, I murmured, "Oh, I'm sorry." So this was the first time Mr. Gessler, the author had heard Mr. Gessler mentioning his brother, and the author felt shocked and sorry about the demise of his brother. "Yes," he answered, "he was a good man. He made a good boot. But he is dead." And he touched the top of his head, where the hair had suddenly gone as thin as it had been on that of his poor brother, to indicate, "I suppose, the cause of his death. Do you want any boats?" And he held up the leather in his hand. "It's a beautiful piece." And then he carried on with his work and asked the narrator, "Do you want any boot?" I ordered several pairs. It was very long before they came, but they were better than ever. One simply could not wear them out, and soon after that I went abroad. So again the author ordered several pair of shoes, and they lasted very long, and then the author went abroad. It was over a year before I was again in London, and the first shop I went to was my old friend's. I had left a man of 60, I came back to one of 75, pinched and worn, who genuinely this time did not at first know me. So after many years, when the author returned from London, he first went to his old friend's shop, and now this person was really very old. And this time the Mr. Gessler did not even recognize the narrator at first. "Do you want any boots?" he said. "I can make them quickly. It's in the sake of time." So again Mr. Gessler asked the narrator, "Do you want any shoes? I can make them quickly." I answered, "Please, please, I want boots all around, every kind." So the narrator said that, "Yes, I want every kind of boot." I had given those boots up when one evening they came. One by one I tried them on. In shape and fit, in finish and quality of leather, they were the best he had ever made. I flew downstairs, wrote a check, and posted it at once with my own hand. So after many days the shoes arrived, and as usual, as always, they were fit and fine, and they were wonderful. And the narrator was very glad to see them, and he at once went downstairs to write a check and posted the check. A week later, passing the little street, I thought I would go in and tell him how splendidly, that means wonderfully, the new boots fitted. But when I came to where his shop had been, his name was gone. So while a week later, while passing through the street, the narrator thought that he would go to Mr. Gessler's shop and tell him personally how wonderfully, how splendidly the shoes fitted. But when he went to the place where his shop was, his name from the shop was gone. I went in very much disturbed. In the shop there was a young man with an English face. "Mr. Gessler in?" I asked. I said. "No, sir," he said. "No, but we can attend to anything with pleasure. We have taken the shop over." Yes, I said. "But Mr. Gessler?" "Oh," he answered, "dead." "Dead? But I only received these boots from him last Wednesday week." So when he went there, he saw that there was a person with English face, and he inquired about Mr. Gessler, and the person said that, "No, we have taken over the shop and we can attend you." And then again the narrator inquired about Mr. Gessler, and he said Mr. Gessler was dead. The narrator was shocked because he had received the shoes from him only last Wednesday. "Ah," he said, "poor old man starved himself." Starved means suffer from hunger. Slow starvation, the doctor called it. You see, he went to work in such a way, would keep the shop on, wouldn't have a soul touch his boots except himself. When he got an order, it took him such a time, people won't wait. He lost everybody. And there he'd sit, going on and on. I will say that for him, not a man in London made a better boot. But look at the competition. He never advertised, would have the best leather too, and do it all himself. Well, there it is. What could you expect with his ideas? So the person with English face said that he died because of starvation, and he also said that how was he to survive, because he took so many ordered, and he would never advertise his shop, and he lost everything. It taken so much of time to make the shoes, and people couldn't wait so long. So gradually he lost all his customers. And he also said that I would say that there was not a single person in the whole London who made better shoes than him. But then he lost all his job because he was very slow in his work. He was doing it alone, and he never advertised. But starvation, that may be a bit flowery. Flowery here means disapproving, as the saying is, but I know him myself. He was sitting over his boots day and night to the very last, you see. Then the narrator, he was shocked, and he said that how can he die by starvation? And the person said that yeah, it can be a bit disapproving. That means it can be a bit too much. He might not have died from starvation, but I had seen it myself that he would spend hours without eating, without drinking, day and night. He would just make shoes. I used to watch him. Never gave himself time to eat. Never had a penny in the house. All went in rent and leather. How he lived so long, I don't know. He regularly let his fire go out. He was a character, but he made good boots. So the person with English face, he again said that I have watched him. He never gave himself time to eat. He never had a penny. He was very poor. He never had money at home. He had no money to give his rent because he spent all his money in buying the leather. He did not even have money at last to buy leather. And the person again said that I don't know how he had made it so long, how he lived so long. He regularly let his fire go out. That means he let the fire go out means stop working on something. So he never stopped working on the shoes. He was a character, but he made very good boots. Yes, I said, he made good boots. So the narrator at last said, yes, of course, he made good boots. This story is by John Galsworthy. It is simplified for a better understanding. So students, do you realize how this person, Mr. Gessler, devoted his life for his art? So this was the story of Mr. Gessler. I hope you have understood the story. Do comment and tell me. Thank you for listening, students. Bye-bye. Take care.